Welcome everyone, welcome back. I hope you've enjoyed your very quick break. Got some exercise done in that time. Now we are starting our next session, a conversation with Ro Allen, Victoria's Equal Opportunity and Human Rights Commissioner. And to introduce Ro and have that conversation is my good colleague, Dr. Matteo Vergani, who is the director of Tackling Hate Project, and will share this session for us. Thank you, Matteo.
Thank you so much, Sharam. It's really an honor to chair this session with the Victorian Human Rights Commissioner, Ro Allen. Ro has such an impressive experience. I'm sure everyone who is attending this panel knows Ro. Experience with working with Victoria's communities, which is actually what we need right now to bring the discussion to the table and understand how can we tackle hate in the best interest of communities. Since 2015, Ro has served as the inaugural Victorian Commissioner for LGBTIQ+ communities, and in this role, they have been a powerful advocate for rights of rainbow communities and provide strategic advice to the Victorian government. So we are all really thrilled to know that Ro is the Human Rights Commissioner now. So I will leave the floor or the screen to Ro now for a presentation, and then I invite everyone to ask questions using the Q&A function. Thank you, Ro.
Thank you so much, Matteo, and thank you for inviting me today. Can I first acknowledge that I'm zooming to you from the land of the Wurundjeri people. I want to pay my respects to Aboriginal elders, past and present, and any Aboriginal folks that are joining us today. Always was and always will be unceded Aboriginal land. And I'm very proud to represent a government in Victoria that's working on treaty, commit myself today and every day to the treaty process. Well, when Matteo asked me to come along, I had to agree, because I think he's probably single-handedly turning me into what I call now a bit of a data lover, where before it just, it never really understood why it was so important, probably before I joined the government back in 2015, and as Matteo said, and a project working back then with DPC and collaborating. So what I thought I'd do is just a few very quick slides, just a bit of an overview for anyone who doesn't understand the acts that we manage within the Commission, and a few thoughts, and then really hand it over to a broader conversation. But you know, we know that racism and the reports and the inquiry lines and the information we're getting at the Commission is only increasing during the pandemic. I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know, and through some of our racism information sessions, we are hearing horrific things, particularly from one Asian doctor who said he's too scared to catch public transport to the hospital he works at anymore because of the racism and the discrimination that he experiences, just random people on the train line. So we know those things are increasing. We know there are spikes and troughs in that, and our data collection around that is only going in one direction. So let's just talk about the acts that we do have a mandate over at the Commission. Of course, the Equal Opportunity Act, that's being always seems to be reviewed. It's sort of had sticky tape and blue tack, all different things on it now. It now has now 20 different protected attributes. The latest I snuck in, it's not technical, but with the change in suppression bill, we added another attribute around intersex variation. So people born with an intersex variation are also one of the protected attributes now. The Racial and Religious Tolerance Act, which is a title that I dislike enormously. No one should be tolerated. So that is also under review at the moment, and the Parliament has reviewed that. The recommendations have been public, and so watch that space. Of course, the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities, often you hear it as the Charter or just the Charter of Human Rights. I think it's really important that we talk about the responsibilities with that. And the last one, which was one I worked on, which is ironic now that I'm in charge of implementing it, starts in February next year, which is the change in suppression or the conversion practice, the idea that you can't change somebody's sexuality or gender identity. And obviously we'll be able to collect a lot of hate information in that space as well. So they're the four main acts. What we do is we have an inquiry line. We can also do disputes as well. A big focus for me is education. I suppose in my 4 years, 8 months, 2 weeks less that I've got left of my 5-year term, I'm certainly going to focus on education. I'm probably more of a carrot commissioner than a stick commissioner, and I have powers to investigate, but I'd rather do education and bring people with me, and that's kind of my style. And hopefully you'll see that over the 5 years. So in the racism space, we could always do more. We could always improve it. We do have the community reporting tool. Many of you would have seen that, and that's just a snapshot there. It's very simple. I call it the dump and run. You know, and there's a lot of people that don't want to go through a formal complaint. They either haven't got the emotional bandwidth, as I say, to go through that process, or they don't trust the commission because we're seen as government or whatever. But this has certainly been a tool where we're getting great responses. Very simple. You basically say what happened and where. The postcode is quite interesting to record that and then click report it. It's hosted on our webpage. We have 24 other groups that host it, including 20 local governments that host this, and we can come back and talk about this a bit more. But we're seeing an increase, obviously, in the last couple of years of the use of this tool, but also the reports of what's happening. And obviously the what's happening box, people are getting more confident and giving us a lot more rich information about what's happening in their area. So to go with that, we run racism information sessions, and this is really from our anti-racism project, which has been funded for 3 years. And basically those information sessions are aimed at multicultural, multi-faith communities to be able to educate them on our laws, make them feel more confident in being able to use the tool, know what how Victoria wants to protect them, understand their laws, empower them to make complaints. The other thing that we're highly involved with is the anti-racism task force in Victoria, which is a fantastic initiative, and we'll end up with the anti-racism strategy June next year. I think that's ambitious. I think we need to let government have a little bit of flexibility with that. In a pandemic, everything's being stretched a little bit, but certainly have a look for that around there. I was offered a seat at that table. There's 11 community members, and I've given that, obviously as a white commissioner, I delegated that down to Monica, who runs our anti-racism project within the commission. I'm mentoring her and keeping quite closely connected to that. But I know those voices around the table, the Victorian Multicultural Commission and Commissioner Viv, that strategy is going to be amazing. And I know that data and data collection could be an excellent platform within that strategy. And I think there's an opportunity there. And allies, we also run a bystander or human rights and how to report it allies workshop. We know that many allies want to know how human rights works and how they can support their friends, family, and other people within Victoria. And that's been highly successful. The project has been terrific. So what else is happening for us? Oh, too far. Got trigger happy. So there's a couple of, we're very much focused on place-based initiatives. Addressing Islamophobia, we're working with Islamic Council of Victoria, again, to run those racism information sessions. And I'll talk about collaboration soon, but we don't hold all those networks. It's about, well, really bringing the Commission's existing relationships, and then every phone number that I've got in my mobile phone that I've had the same number since I started. And, you know, I never delete any phone number. If you give me your mobile, expect to get a call on it at some point. It's really around collecting those networks, whether it's CMY, Centre for Multicultural Youth, Carmel Guir, or Islamic Council, whoever it is. I'm into partnerships and working in that space. Shepparton, well, I used to work in Shepparton, so it's fantastic to come to the Commission and see we're doing a place-based project with the Aboriginal Legal Service in Shepparton. There was reported, people may have remembered in the media, about racism particularly to Aboriginal young people in the school there. So we're working with, as I said, the Aboriginal Legal Service, the local Bobby Nichols elders there and others, to create a online and interactive education program that we'll be delivering there, as well as the old barbecue, go in and talk to communities about the laws. And we're working with the principal of the high school there as well. It's an interesting case study where 5 school campuses are all being merged and coming together. So it's a mesh of all sorts of communities. There's a terrific community group made up of Aboriginal elders, multicultural community, council, ourselves, and the school community, and really looking at initiatives to work on anti-racism. And I think it'll be a great place-based strategy we can take and develop and deliver in other places with education. Something I'm really excited about is our Aboriginal data sovereignty piece. This, again, I can't take responsibility for. I wish I could. I came in on the end of it. But it's really looking at our policies in relation to how we collect Aboriginal data, and to make sure that we do that in the principles of self-determination, and how we work with Aboriginal communities so they can own their own data that we keep. I think that's really important in this conversation as we go forward. And of course, I mentioned the change in suppression. This is coming very quickly. February will be here very fast, and we're looking at the ways people will report the discrimination they're experiencing from faith-based communities in relation to this, and how we do this to make sure that, again, we support folks and we don't push this practice underground. That's the key for me. If we go in with a very big stick, I think that we have the possibility of doing that. And I think this is a prime example of the group. As a survivor myself, I know many survivors won't have the energy and mental health levels to go through a full investigation, or what they might see as a complaint process, but how we could have a way for them to deliver that, so we can develop a picture over time in relation to that. And I've talked about this a bit before, but collaboration is my driver. It's the key. It's about using others in their information. And Mateo's broached me with a good idea about using our reporting tool and collect other. One of the things, it was actually week 1 of when I arrived. One of the reasons that I took this job is as the LGBTI commissioner, I was really aware that there are 12 commissioners. People might not know that, but there are like 12 commissioners in Victoria, and we do work as collaborative as we can, but we do work in our own silos. And part of wanting to take this role at the Equal Opportunity Human Rights Commission is about how we could get an intersectional approach to human rights and data collection. And so the idea of coming together with academia, with Deakin, bringing other commissioners' data, bringing other government pieces of data, there's not ever been a better time to work collectively to address hate, discrimination, vilification in Victoria. We have to do that. I'm aware that, everybody has human rights, including racists, as we've heard this morning, and it is about balance. I've been on the radio a couple of times talking about it's always a balance of human rights. What are the human rights of the protesters versus our rights not to get COVID, and the rights of the police to turn up and have a safe day at the office as well. It is a balance, but I think it's the way to go. It's the future to actually address hate and racism. I'm aware that we are responsible for the privacy, and we have maybe some privacy provisions that stop me from sharing, and it could be looked at. And I think where the pendulum has swung very firmly into the risk category, and maybe we should be really challenging where is that line about the data that we keep and collect, and how can we keep individuals' privacy, but actually do that work to actually improve racism and hate in Victoria. And I'll just put that up quickly. That's some of the handles, as they say, some of the places you can find me, and I'm really happy again to be contacted if anybody wants to talk about in particular parts of the work that we do. So very quick flyby through the commission and what we're doing, Mateo, but really happy to engage in conversation and questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ro, for your presentation that clearly identifies the priorities of the Commission now: collaboration, expanding, the reach of Victoria's legislation, which we know it's very narrow. On this note, I would like to ask you to expand a bit on how the Commission thinks to move beyond, the strong focus on racism, which we know it's a huge problem. And everywhere in the world, even the data that Paul showed from the UK this morning show that racist hate crimes are a very big, if not the largest portion of hate crimes that happen. But we have a problem in Victoria in the sense that the Racial and Religious Tolerance Act is focusing only on racism. The Anti-Racism Task Force, which is a great initiative, it's focusing on racism. So I know you are part of the task force. So what's the idea to make it more comprehensive, let's say, of all communities?
Yeah, I mean, there's some things I can say now, and then some things I'll just have to say, watch this space. And I'm aware that, I'm being recorded too, Matteo, but, I absolutely believe that we've got to bring these things together, and we can't see them in isolation, and you can be a Muslim person, and gay and have discrimination on both fronts. And how do we bring that together in a piece of legislation is really important to me, and we don't see things in isolation. I think for me, how do we tackle, the big question of how do we tackle this, I've already sort of mentioned, is education. So the work we're doing in the Shepparton schools, and I think the work in schools is so important that we don't keep breeding a next generation of people that haven't got any critical thinking skills, that haven't met or listened to the stories or gone on a journey with people that are different from themselves. How do we educate people around social media and getting out of the click bubble of thinking that, this is what I believe and everybody else around me believes that. So I think those strategies are really important. And I think for me, the key is there are people who know the answers to this. Government just has to go out and consult and co-design. And that's why the task force, the Anti-Racism Task Force, I think is such a great platform, because it's government, it's got the authorising environment of government, but they're 11 community members that all bring their own networks and their own experiences and solutions to the table. So I'm holding a lot of hope on the strategy. I just think that the strategy has an element to be written yet about how we collaborate around data, because that evidence is so powerful. As you know, the evidence can change opinion, can move local governments and state governments and federal governments and communities in one direction to support it. We know that our resources are limited, and so we need to target them too. We don't live in particularly in COVID budgets, we're going to need to be really careful about where we spend, and not that I'm saying any money combating racism is a bad use of money, but we really need to make sure that, gone are the days of pilot after pilot, like an airline. We actually have to nail some of this and back the projects that work. And that evidence base will tell us which projects work and which ones we have to put more energy and effort into.
Thank you, Ro. Another question is about collaboration with communities. So you say that really one of the key criteria or values that inspire your journey and your work is really collaboration. So how do you plan to get in touch and work with different communities, or do you have priorities in reaching these collaborations? What's the plan?
It's a bit random. I'm going where I'm invited at the moment, and as an extrovert, this lockdown is really inhibiting that. I suppose I have to prioritize at the moment faith groups, and the multi-faith groups in there. So I am having to sounds terrible, prioritizing heads of churches at the moment to talk about the change in suppression and religious exemption. So that's taking me into a lot of communities and very diverse ethnic communities. I've got, I'm a Violet Town kid, so I've got rural in my heart. So as soon as I'm allowed on the road, but I want to go out regionally, and so Shepparton. But while I'm in Shepparton, I want to talk to the Aboriginal community. You know, I want to go to Ethnic Council in Shepparton. I want to talk broadly. You know, if they let me into Rotary, I'll do Rotary on the way home for dinner. You know, so we hit a town and we do a series of meet and greet and listening stops. And I mean, I previously in my last job, I did a roadshow in the police commissioner's bus. I don't know if anybody ever went to one of those roadshows, but you know, we hit 29 towns and we went in and we did information sessions and we learned so much. And I think that the rural vote and marriage equality was, you know, connected to the conversations we were able to have. And I think, and I never forget, I went to a small town called Witchyproof, and I was delivering this LGBTI information session, and this fella came up and lifted his trousers and said, "Commissioner," he says, "I don't believe in anything you're going to say, but the fact that you've come to Witchyproof, I've come to listen." And so at the end of the session, he said, "Well, Commissioner," he said, you haven't done your cause any harm." And I'll never forget that. And I was just like, you've got people, you know, if you want to see real change, you know, you have to walk the talk and be real. And so as soon as allowed, I will be out in every corner of Victoria talking about this to anyone who'll listen.
A question from our audience. How widely used is the community reporting tool? And do you know what type of incidents are being reported, like more hate speech, more hate crimes, if it's more adopted by some communities but not others?
Yeah, I got a few stats here. We've certainly seen a 22% increase in race discrimination on the reporting tool. They're not really large numbers. So 486 inquiries, 176 complaints related to racism vilification. They do well in the local government areas where they're hosted on the local sites as well. And, you know, 58 of those have been reported as very, you know, occurring in public places. So, you know, happening in people's neighbourhoods. So we have a fair bit of data about that. I think that's certainly an area we can build on that. And I don't think I can get the breakdown of every language spoken, but, you know, it'd be fairly easy for me to say it's not a coverage, it's not a full coverage. And there is a correlation between where we're running information sessions to which community groups and who uses it. And we see, obviously, after the information sessions, you know, elders and people in those communities are empowered to use it, and we might see an increase for a while in that. I just think it's showing that it has use. I just think it's probably at its, you know, there's only so many information sessions we can run. How do we collaborate to share a tool more broadly and have it out there? But it's certainly giving us enough information to know where some of the hotspot areas are. But I don't think you could say, because we don't have local government statewide coverage, I don't think you could say it's, you know, even. Obviously, anywhere in Victoria you can use it, but obviously it's being used in some areas where we've been invited to run the sessions and where it's being hosted locally as well.
Another question that came through is about hate speech. Do you think that the Commission should have a stronger focus on monitoring and doing education on hate speech? And how do you see the risk of, you know, incurring in a sort of thought police?
Well, I think we can. We're really lucky. We've just employed an education specialist who can do online interactive education, and I think, you know, I think that's going to be a way we can do more standalone packages around hate speech, and I think we shouldn't be scared about going into those places and doing more in that way, and trying to reach more people. Obviously, a lot of our education goes into explaining the laws in Victoria, about explaining the Charter, and a lot of that goes into educating the public service, which is very broad, local government and all the entities of government. So we do a lot of education into the public service, but I think we have to step up on that and do a lot more around hate speech, because I think it is clear, you know, it is clear what's what's not acceptable, but what also is unlawful in Victoria. And meanwhile, back of house, we need to strengthen or change, whichever you want to call it, the Racial and Religious Tolerance Act, and then educate people. Sometimes it's not that the laws are there, it's just people don't understand the laws and they don't make complaints if their rights have been breached. So it's the three-pronged element to other laws fit for purpose. How do we strengthen them? And then how do we educate people about them while educating them, that, they're unacceptable behaviours, and then how do we get people to report? And we could do better on all those three pillars.
I wanted to ask you also about a concept that Paul Giannasi, our keynote speaker, mentioned today. So he said that collaboration between, or let's say among community groups to tackle hate works only with community groups that acknowledge solidarity, so that stand together against hate against any of the groups involved. Because if someone is, against the type of hate that victimizes one's own community, but not the other, collaboration is really hard. Do you think he's right in this?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's things that draw us together. I mean, I can, I can disagree with, like I'll give you an example, a faith leader, just bring up marriage equality again, fundamentally disagreed on that, but you can find the area that you agree on, which is self-harm and suicide of young people. So in relation to a conversion practice conversation, we might disagree theologically on these things or ethically on these things, but this is the area we can collaborate on. So, I mean, there are different groups for different reasons, not just race-based groups or community-based groups from that perspective. But, you can come together if you've got that core piece that you can agree on. And often I think collaborations fall over when you go outside that stream, when you try to, collaborate on areas that you haven't got common ground on, and to make sure you go back to what do we agree on, what can we collaborate on. But, racism and hate speech, surely there are so many groups that would agree on that. I mean, I know at the moment, the power we have of investigation for the change and suppression bill that comes in February is new powers for the Commission that we haven't had and been able to act before. And a very, very valid question from the Islamic Council is, Commissioner, why do you have powers to investigate transphobia and not Islamophobia? Damn good question, absolutely good question. So we have to do this piece well, and then we have to go back and advocate to government to get those powers as well. And it's about leaving nobody behind and bringing everybody with us. And we should have equal powers for equal communities ultimately. But it's going to be a staged journey about how we the government have given us this power. I think it's a bit of a test, Matteo, to see how we go and how we use it. We don't abuse the power, and then we can see how that goes. And that law is actually being reviewed in 2 years, which is a bit unusual. Usually laws get reviewed in 5 years, but there's a special mechanism in that law, the change and suppression law, to review it in 2 years. So that's a good indicator that potentially we'll look at the civil scheme and criminal scheme in that, see if it's working, what is the data telling us, and that'll help us. I'm not saying it's going to take 2 years. I don't know how long it's going to take, but we have to keep advocating collectively to increase the systemic powers of the Commission and government in relation to in the space that we're in.
I've got a lot of questions coming, so maybe time for one more. From
shorter answers.
Yeah, from your positions and thinking about some of the approaches that the practitioners working group is looking at, what are some of the ways you think we can better share data and work together from various perspectives, community, academia, government, to ensure we are tackling hate in our community? And what could we do practically? What do you think are some of the first steps to take?
Well, I think the first step for us, Matteo, is to set up that meeting we've got to have And I'll be the first to say, I have no idea how to do it. I just know how to get everybody in the room that has the tech skills and legal, barriers to put up around what we need to do. I have no idea about that stuff. I'm not a lawyer, but I do know how to chair a meeting and get people to the table and have the conversation. And I'm really good at knowing what I don't know. And what we have to do, first of all, in that meeting is define what the problem is. What are we trying to do? And then come up with solutions about how we do it. And then try and just, work our way through the preciousness that people bring about their data and their community and their tools, and see whether we can just keep putting the greater good and see if we can get there. That's my strategy. That's my commitment. The actual data collection, that's all about you. That's all about you. How that works. Yeah, that's collaboration. That's collective impact. That's been the foundation of my work. Collective impact, bringing disparate groups together to work on one cause. Everybody has their strengths, and together you can collectively work on the solution. And I think that's the model here. I would be channeling a collective impact approach.
Thank you so much, Ro. I have my colleagues reminding me that the session is time is finished, but it's really great to have you here, and I could stay speaking with you the whole day. I think I just wanted to finish by saying that in a recent research we have done with CRIS, with a sample of Victorians from diverse communities, the Victorian Human Rights Commission was the most trusted institution among a list of many others to report data about hate incidents. So I think this power, this trust that the Commission has is really important to underpin future work collaboratively all together to benefit as a society of this trust, which is a very rare currency.
Well, thanks, Matteo. I feel that weight of that. And I do want to commit today and to you that is something I want to definitely make a pillar of my term in this role, that we really do try and come together and nail this, because it's so important.
Thank you so much, Ro. It was great to have you in this session and great to hear from you. I will now hand over to Sharam because I know I'm over time. Apologies. Thank you so much again, Ro.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Ro Allen and Matteo. Fantastic conversation, and of course, very timely topic for us to be discussing that. We are going to come back to some of those themes after lunch when we look at right-wing extremism and conspiracy theories. But now, I think we've all earned a bit of a break for lunch. It's going to be a bit longer than yesterday, so we're going to come back at 1:30 p.m. sharp to have a panel discussion. Looking forward to seeing you back. Thank you.